Welcome to the program, Prime Minister Šimonytė.
Hello.
It's a big pleasure to welcome you in the Munich Security Conference. Also, there are lots of discussions and talks, but in your opinion, is the war in Ukraine high on the agenda of the conference and also on your own agenda during the meetings with other participants?
I would say that on my own agenda, on the agenda of my government, on the agenda of Lithuanian officials, it's a top-notch #1 priority for obvious reasons. But I would say that in the discussions that I've been taking part so far, of course, all the discussions evolves around the situation in Ukraine.
Are such discussions are active and fruitful as there were a year or 2 years ago? Do you feel any kind of fatigue or no?
No, I don't call it fatigue, because I think this is what Putin wants us to feel, fatigue. It's not fatigue. It's most probably the change of initial expectations, maybe, especially to people who were very optimistic about the 2022 and thinking that this war will end sooner rather than later, and it will take shorter rather than longer, something we see now. And of course, this persistence of the situation for nearly 2 years now, of course, is sort of changing the dynamics of a debate, because in the beginning it was like what we need for the very fast victory, and now there is a different constellation and different contemplation. And to add to that, unfortunately, and this is unfortunate, the political cycles in different countries, from US to Europe, are in a phase where people tend to discuss more about internal issues, because this is like any pre-electoral cycle will presume that people speak more about issues that are domestically relevant and less about foreign policy or geopolitics. So this we also have to have in mind when we sort of discuss how much attention is devoted to war in Ukraine in different countries. There are elections in European Parliament this June. Of course, U.S. elections this November of crucial importance, and internal issues are taking over at least part of the debate.
Are Western leaders ready to work and to continue its support for Ukraine in such a new reality they have discovered for them? I mean, a long war of attrition.
Well, I think that politicians generally understand that this is not something we can expect to finish in the nearest months or half a year. So the determination to be with Ukraine as long as it takes, I think, did not change. Of course, the situation requires different solutions, because there are so many issues, from delivery of weapons, ammunitions, to financial support, then EU accession for Ukraine and security guarantees. And there are more issues sort of piling onto each other. But I think now there is one might very clearly see that more and more politicians not only understand, but also declare that this is a vital interest for Europe, not to let Ukraine lose this war.
But are they ready to work and support Ukraine for as long as it takes, or for as long as it is possible?
Well, for us, the goal is even different. We are saying not as long as it takes, not as long as it is possible, but as long as Ukraine needs to win this war. I mean, this is the formula that we should use, because otherwise we are in a very dire situation, because the security situation will deteriorate for Europe, first and foremost, very seriously, if there is, I mean, any other consideration. So I think that current leadership, current politicians, of course, understand that pretty well. We know that we differ from Russia to the extent that in our countries elections are unpredictable. So you cannot say who wins. In Russia, you can say, because they have no elections, just some procedure of something. So and the internal debate, and I am even less sort of pessimistic about whether a particular politician can change the strategy, the approach, the route, but the pre-electoral cycle usually takes away the attention from Ukraine to internal matters, and then we lose some of the time because people are saying, "Oh, we need to win the elections, and then we will come back to our strong support." This is a risk, but I mean we know it. We know where elections are where, and we try to be as eloquent as we can in our support for Ukraine, also when we speak with our international partners and friends.
I would like also to cover current decision-making process on support for Ukraine, both in the EU and NATO. Why is it today is more difficult to make big decisions on support for Ukraine, especially in the European Union?
I think it's not harder, because European Union is a very unique thing in itself. For many decisions, you need unanimity. For sanctions, for example, for financial support, you need for accession invitation, you need unanimity. And then we know also from the history of Europe that there are cases when you seek for this unanimity for quite a long period, because countries do have their interest. This time it's different because any moment we lose, any extra month we debate how to get to an agreement with particular member states, it's Ukrainian people who are dying and who are being killed by Russians each and every day. And this is different. So unfortunately, some of member states still use this leverage in unanimity for their internal politics again until we come to a decision. So it is nothing new in European Union. The only problem is that what is new, it's people's life that are related to those decision making, and this is unfortunate.
It seems like a little bit cynical to do such a things during the middle of the full-scale war.
Well, some people would say that politics is cynical. I would not agree to that. I don't think so. But you cannot exclude completely countries or politicians, for that matter, maybe not countries, but more politicians to that matter, using particular moments in decision making for their own internal purpose.
You mentioned about sanctions policy. Recently, Hungary has blocked new round of sanctions against Russia in the European Union. Don't you think that it's really important to change course, to change strategy on the Hungary and their voting history?
Well, from what I know, it's not a veto. It's a
kind of blackmail?
No, it's a kind of a sort of technical break that you take for additional consideration. So let's be optimistic about the outcome. It's the 13th package. So far we had 12, and we managed to agree to 12 packages unanimously, including Hungary. So I would remain positive about the 13th package and the next packages to come. Of course, it complicates the matter because we think that it should be accepted faster. And Lithuania, is a very strong proponent for stronger sanctions, and we are preparing the materials for decision making. So we are very active in this topic. And of course, it's also sad for us where some of our proposals are not agreed on, like nuclear or some other issues that we think can be done, but it cannot be done because some member states object. But so far we managed to adopt 12 packages of sanctions. So I think there will be also successful packages in the future.
I would like also to cover American politics. Bloomberg reported that Donald Trump is considering to push Ukraine to negotiate with Russia by cutting off the aid for Ukraine. Does the West know how to deal with Donald Trump?
Well, U.S. is a very important transatlantic partner. It's crucial for European security. It's crucial for transatlantic cooperation, nuclear deterrence, and all the aspects of general stability in around the globe and also in Europe. We hear now and then all sorts of speculations, some quotes from the past, maybe some rhetorics of the candidates that we can sort of speculate on. But I would say that for me, it is quite reckless thing to speculate and sort of to increase even this lack of trust for the commitments that the countries have made, including the United States. What is important for Europe, I think, and what is absolutely true, that for quite a long period, Europe was underperforming in the field of its security and defense. And the reliance on US was very strong. And I'm not saying that the US is not a trustworthy partner, but I'm saying that Europe had to do much more than it was doing, because just, you know, the guarantee, the NATO umbrella seemed to be sort of obvious and easy to rely on. And now more and more European countries do understand what they've done wrong, not only in defense policy, also in energy policy and on all counts. But we have very practical difficulties, like our industry is underdeveloped. We know, because when we need extra support for Ukraine, then we can be more or less reliable source of financial aid, but when it comes to real things like weapons, munition, and the stuff that Ukraine needs on the battleground, it much more relates on US support than on Europe. So Europe has to rethink its strategy, and not only to rethink, but redo as soon as it can, regardless of what administration we will see after November elections.
But is Europe really capable of compensating the US aid? Is it a real thing to do?
Well, I think that Europe has to think along these lines. This war is in Europe, not in US. It's in Europe. So if Europe is negligent, if Europe does not do what it has to do as fast as it can do, then it is very well a risk for Europe itself. So I think there is no other choice, simply.
NATO official told me that Russian President Putin is confident that he can win this war. What is the source of his confidence, and don't you think that it could be a reason that the US aid has not passed, for example?
Well, you know, when Putin started this invasion, I think he made all sorts of calculations. First calculation was about Ukrainian people, where he proved to be completely wrong. When he thought, or he was told, that he will be greeted with flowers and with the parade in Krещатик, and it never happened, and I think he was quite surprised. Next thing he thought was that US and EU will not be able to unite, EU will not be able to implement sanctions, EU countries will not be able to get rid of Russian gas. And then he made so many miscalculations along the way. Nobody in EU will provide lethal weapons to Ukraine, with the exception to those Baltic countries and Poland and maybe some couple of other countries. Now we see that, of course, with a delay, and I mean with a too long debate that we should not have, but still European countries are sort of doing things that Ukraine needs. So he had all sorts of miscalculation. But there is, of course, one thing that I think he relies on. And he relies on strategic patience. I mean, he thinks that he has all the time in the world, and this is true, because he will never face elections, he will never face media, he will never face opposition. Hopefully he faces a court in the future, but I mean, this is not how his politics is. And in Europe, we have constant political cycles, we have elections, politicians change each other. So he's placing his bets on the possibility, I would say, that with the change of politicians in the particular states, maybe he can do something with this, with his sort of leverage and persuasion or other means to persuade countries not to support Ukraine anymore. But I don't see this being realistic. I mean, he can hope on this, but he was hoping on many things that never proved to be true.
Also, a NATO official told me that there is a lack of ammunition in Ukraine, also lack of artillery shells. Is European Union ready to solve this issue, and is EU really capable of solving this issue? Because there are lots of important to have lots of ammunition to deliver thousand of rounds.
Well, this is the problem I was mentioning in the beginning, that EU is a very rich economic alliance in terms of money and GDP and people's welfare. But when we look at industry, then we see that this lack of attention for defense and security has material impact on capacity of our industry to produce. And of course, now when the situation changes, countries are investing more and more of their GDP to increase their defense capacities. It will increase. But the companies need to understand that this is a real intention on the part of government, and so there is some lag of time, and it will take some time until the production capacities are in line with what we need. That's why U.S. support is so important for this time. But I have no doubt that EU defense industry will develop very fast in the nearest years because we need it.
You covered U.S. Support for Ukraine. Do you believe that the U.S. Congress would finally agree to this huge, big aid package for Ukraine?
Well, I hope so, but I don't want to speculate.
I would like also to cover Ukraine's aspiration to membership in the European Union. What could be the timeline for this process, and what are the biggest challenges for Ukraine?
Well, I think it is important to start this formal process as soon as we can, and so our push is to have this official start this spring, this half a year, so that the procedures can then go chapter by chapter. And of course, there will be all sorts of issues on different chapters, because it's not an easy process, I can tell from our own experience, but it's a very good process, because in this process, countries' institutions are becoming stronger, more prudent, less corrupt, less prone to arbitrary decision-making. The legislation becomes clearer, more understandable, more in line with legislation in other countries. That brings trust to investors and general population. So I would say this is a very good exercise just for the benefit of Ukraine. Of course, the complication is that Ukraine has to do it at the same time when it has to fight. So for institutions, this is a double pressure to arrange life of the country in the times of war, but also to close chapter by chapter this negotiation package that we have, and that is quite sizable. But seeing how big a progress Ukraine made last year before this decision of the Council by the end of the year that there is an invitation for negotiations for Ukraine and Moldova, I think it's amazing to see how capable the institutions are to function in this circumstances. So there will be lots of work. There will be lots of complications, but there will be lots of goodwill and help from the friendly countries, including mine, of technical expertise, of whatever support Ukraine will need along the way. And I know that this will make country much stronger.
Could Ukraine also be invited to join NATO at the upcoming NATO summit in Washington?
Well, it was
or are you at least working on it to try?
It was a complicated debate before Vilnius summit, as you know, and we have this understanding or agreement that future of Ukraine is within NATO, but then the question is, how far is this future? And for us, and I think also for some of our fellow countries that do see Ukraine's membership in NATO as a strategic interest of ourselves, not only of Ukraine, but also of ourselves. Of course, for us, it is important that we see the progress from one summit to another. And of course, there is it is also important for Ukrainian people, I think. So definitely, our politicians are working with parliamentary diplomacy and government level, on all other levels with our partners, to bring closer this understanding that this gap of time cannot be like, as long as it takes, a very long one. There should be concrete steps that are showing this progress towards factual membership. And it is not easy debate because, of course, for quite a number of countries or politicians, the idea that the country that is at war can somehow be related to NATO.
People scary about it.
Yeah, I mean, people, politicians would say that it might scare also the populations of the countries, and this understanding is present, unfortunately, but we are saying that this invitation is not a factual membership. There is also a quite wide
a
time
kind
frame.
of significant signal. Yeah.
But in terms of signal, I think it would be very clear. But the signals can be sent in politics. Signals can be sent in numerous ways. So what we find crucial is that there is a clear path or clear sort of development of the story, but not just the formal phrases that you will repeat from summit to summit.
What should Ukrainians expect from the Lithuanian government in terms of security assistance this year?
Well, I think that Ukraine can expect the same it was expecting or it was receiving even before this invasion on February 2022. I mean, we will be friends and supporters of Ukraine. We will deliver as much as we can. Of course, we are a small country in terms of GDP and volumes and numbers, but in terms of the share of our GDP, our contribution is quite significant. I mean, our government and also our society is very supportive. No fatigue, no discussions about that we are bored or we want some other news. Of course, we all want good news, but I mean, we understand that this war is going on, and this is also our war. So I think Ukraine can expect, and Ukrainian people can expect, a decent friend in Lithuanian government and also in Lithuanian society, who will do as much as we can, realistically.
Do you expect the whole Western aid to be at least sustained at the current level this year?
I think, again, if we see it the way we say we see it, and I think more and more of us, if not all of us, do see it this way, that the bad outcome of war in Ukraine would mean very bad outcomes for Europe, then I see no other choice for European countries but to support Ukraine, because this war is in Europe.
Thank you, Prime Minister Šimonytė, for your time and for your support for Ukraine, and glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
Thank you very much.